Today, we're talking about the Sunshine Coast real estate market, trends, and lifestyle insights for buyers and sellers. If you're thinking of moving to the Sunshine Coast or just selling your home on the Sunshine Coast, you'll want to hear our take of what's happening right now.
We've come to the end of 2025 and we're starting a brand new year, 2026. And one of the things that everybody wants to know is, what is the real estate market going to be like in 2026?
All right, I'm going to say that nice move-in ready homes that are priced right will move quickly. They will sell quickly. Anything that's a fixer-upper or a dated home or an overpriced home, that'll sit on the market for a little while. And this has actually been the truth for like the last year and a half, almost 2 years. But it's just that people are finally coming around to that way of thinking.
They're accepting that reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think it'll be busy this spring?
Yes and no. So you're going to, right off the top, you're going to have a lot of listings come on the market. So you're going to have stuff that was listed in the fall, then taken off for Christmas, come back on. You'll have those. As soon as we have a few good days in January for photos and videos, then realtors are going to be getting that all ready and putting up new listings. What we're seeing in the Canadian economy and the world economy is just a lot of uncertainty and maybe a thought of a downturn and tougher times to come. And so I think sellers are kind of seeing that, and they just want to get ahead of this, maybe prices coming down a little bit more. And so then they will just want to list and sell sooner than later. And so we'll see what happens with that.
Okay. And so how do you think buyers will react in the spring?
There's been buyers sitting on the sidelines for a little while, and they've kind of been seeing the prices come down a little bit, but they are ready to buy if it's a move-in ready home. The problem is we don't have a lot of supply of nice move-in ready homes. And so if those come on and they're priced right, they're going to move fast. So you're going to see buyers like jumping on those if they're priced right, just because there's lack of supply in that area.
Okay. And what about, are there still investors in the market buying stuff?
No, that's going to be slow, that part. So that's why the fixer-uppers and the sweat equity homes, those are just, they have to be a steal of a deal when ththey're listed for those buyers to come in, because we have a lack of investors. And even the sweat equity, like a young buyer that wants to buy a home and say, I'm going to put my time and energy into it and money into it. It's just, there's less of those around, because a lot of young families, and they're working hard. They're trying to keep up with cost of living, and you need a lot of capital to be able to qualify and buy a home, never mind money on the side to fix it up. And so like fixing a home that's like a 2-story home that a retiree is selling because they're downsizing, that's like a very nice home, but it's possibly somewhat dated because they've kept it in really good shape, but it's dated. So then a new buyer wants to come in and wants to upgrade it. But that could be like $150,000 to upgrade. And so for a buyer to have that money sitting on the side, it's just not too many of those. The other thing with fixer-uppers is that you have to consider the cost of asbestos, because if you're renovating a home and you're dealing with asbestos because of the age of the home, then that's pretty costly.
Okay, with that in mind, do you see a difference between younger buyers and retiree buyers?
You know, a lot of them are, I'm going to say it again, go for that nice move-in ready, smaller home. Younger buyers don't necessarily want a big home. And then the retirees, if they can like downsize into a little bungalow, they may want that as well. Or you're moving from the Vancouver, or you're moving from Toronto and you're downsizing, and you're a retiree, you don't want a big home. So you're all going to be wanting that nice little home with ocean view, ideally, which we don't have a lot of nice little bungalow homes with ocean view in Gibsons.
That are move-in ready.
Yeah, they're move-in ready. You have some like in Upper Gibsons or in other areas that don't have an ocean view, but if you're moving to the coast and a big attraction of moving to the coast is ocean view, then you might not be wanting to buy those in the community where there's no ocean view.
This makes me think of different options if you're downsizing, that you're living in a house and you're thinking you're going to buy a condo or a townhouse. But retirees, is that really what they're looking for, or are they looking for single level living?
Yeah, definitely single level living for retirees. And so most of our townhouses are like 2 or 3 stories. So younger families are going to have that option, that'll be for them more than a retirees. Retirees, there's a few buildings that we have that have elevators, and then the suite is 1 level. So then that works for them. The other thing with townhouses and younger families is that with a townhouse, you have the strata fees. So then it can be a little bit harder for them to qualify because they need enough money to be able to cover the strata fees and the mortgage when they're qualifying for a mortgage.
We've seen in the last, 2 or 3 years, prices on single family homes come down. Has that been the same for townhouses and condos?
Yeah, I think they came down a lot more than they really should have. That was necessary. We did see a big price drop last year in condos and just townhomes, way more than I expected. And I think what happened is that you had the stories from Vancouver and Toronto that were coming out about the oversupply of condos coming onto the market there. And so that mentality maybe sloshed over here a little bit. But the truth is, like, we don't have an oversupply of condos and townhouses here. We don't have a supply of properties that much at all. And so it didn't really need to affect our market, but it did a little bit. Well, you've heard like those places, they're just like, they call them dog crate condos, right? Like just small little condos that don't even have a parking spot. And that a lot of them were built more for investors or for Airbnb. And so now that they're already built and the developer wants to sell them, then they're not necessarily selling and not able to close on them. And so prices have come way down on that. But so our prices came down a little bit. I'm just guessing that it had an effect because of that. But then, we don't have a lot of that supply here. So that's going to level off. Townhouses and condos, we're not going to see so much of a downturn in the price in 2026. That's going to level off.
So if we move on to sellers on the Sunshine Coast in 2026, what should they consider or expect?
Yes, sellers really need to balance pricing for the value that their home is. And they have to be realistic about, the state of their home. And is it a fixer-upper home? And if it is, it has to be a steal of a deal for buyers to come in. But if it is a nice move-in ready home, then price it right.
Well, and I think that they have to be realistic about what a fixer-upper is to a mid-20s, late-20s buyer in 2026. Some of these sellers that have had their homes for, 25, 30, maybe even 40 years, the house is in really nice shape, but it's a bit of a time capsule.
Yeah.
And so when somebody says to them, you're going to need to do a lot of work here, they're like, well, what are you talking about? It's great. The pea green appliances are perfect. The pink toilet flushes fine.
Yeah.
And that it all is just a really nice, well-kept place that you could move into it. But realistically, in 2026, new buyers want like new finishes. Mm-hmm. And so even though that everything works, I think that older sellers maybe have to wrap their head around that it's just so outdated to be of little value anymore.
Yeah, because the buyer has to qualify for that home and then have money on the side to be able to fix it. If the seller is a retiree seller, they're really going to want to think about their timing. Like, how long do they want to have their home listed, or do they want to move on with their life, do their next step? So they really want to consider that when pricing their home.
Are you saying then that if you're, a retiree that maybe thinks you're going to move off coast to be closer to grandkids, or maybe you're downsizing into like an assisted living situation or something like that, that you want to consider your timeline for selling as well as the dollar value? Like, do you want to take 3 years selling your house to squeeze an extra 10 or 20 grand out of it? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they'll just want to consider that all, because then if you want to be closer to family, then you don't want to be waiting years and years for your house to sell. You want to be able to move on to that next step.
Often when we talk about new buyers, we're talking about out-of-market buyers, people that haven't lived on the Sunshine Coast before. Maybe they're coming from the Lower Mainland or further away. And what are things that will stand out for buyers when they're looking to buy on the Sunshine Coast?
The first thing I think about is we don't have a lot of cookie cutter home. We have a lot of unique properties, and a lot of it has to do that we're the size of the lot or the topography, like we're on a slope and we want ocean views. So then the home is oriented a certain way on the lot. And it's when you come from like an Edmonton or Calgary or Toronto, you're used to these suburban neighborhoods that have your cookie cutter little single family homes or townhouses, and there's less of that here. So what you had maybe in mind that the type of home you're going to have, you're probably not going to get that here.
Is that the same to be said of price? That maybe if you're selling in Edmonton or Calgary, you've got a certain price in your head for a single family home, and that maybe isn't the reality here? And I guess the same with Vancouver, but maybe it moves in the other way. Maybe if you're moving from Vancouver to here, you think you're going to spend less, but maybe if you're moving from Edmonton or Calgary, you don't realize that you're going to spend maybe appreciably more.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, for somebody coming from the prairies and from Calgary and Edmonton, they're gonna be surprised if they haven't been paying attention to the market here that they're going to be paying more. And so it might be a little bit more of a reach for them. If they're selling a single family home in Calgary, then they're probably looking at a townhouse over here. They're not going to get that same level of quality of single family home here. So that might be discouraging for them, or unless they're ready for that and they want the lifestyle change of living on the coast. And then Vancouver, they'll be fine. They won't get sticker shock when they come out here. And Toronto, yeah, Toronto's maybe going to be a wash if you come out here. Anyways. Yeah.
I think it probably depends on, like the Toronto market is so
very
massive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a big difference if you're living downtown Toronto or you're living in, Mississauga or you're living in Windsor. Like,
Yeah.
I think, what we consider Toronto is maybe not what people from Toronto consider Toronto. So I think it really depends on your specific in Toronto.
And then people from the prairies, if they want to come out here and they're thinking they're downsizing, unless they're selling like a whole family farm, like chances are they're not downsizing price wise. So that's a little bit of a tougher thing, and maybe they can swing it and maybe not. Going into 2026, buyers will continue to be selective. They'll want ready, nice move-in homes, but they also want to pay the right price for it. They won't overpay for it. Same with retirees. They didn't live this long to overpay for a property at this point in their life. So it needs to be priced right.
And okay, so priced right, let's really put a fine point on that for people that are selling. They really need to like meter their expectations, don't they, for what they think the house is worth versus what it's likely actually going to fetch on the open market.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like work with your realtor, test the market, but don't test the market too crazily.
Or for too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the market is steadily falling.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
And it's not 10% a month or anything like that, but it is moving downward.
Yeah. And I do think the sooner the better to list in 2026. I don't think we're going to have the big hype of a spring market. Like maybe we're just going to have a little bit and it'll be early. It's all guessing.
As we wrap up, if you had one piece of advice for buyers and sellers, the most important thing that they could know moving into 2026, what would that be?
If I can give buyers and sellers one really good big piece of advice, is if they're not already working with a realtor, is to call me. I'm a realtor in Gibsons, based in Gibsons, and you can call me at 604-399-8935. You can follow my blog, vallabrecque.ca. So yeah, any questions about the real estate here on the Sunshine Coast, I will help you out.
What if they're young and they don't call? Can they text you at that number?
They can text me.
Okay. What if they're young and they don't text and they just they Instagram?
Yeah, slide into my DMs.
Slide into your DMs. And of course, people can keep watching all the videos on Live on the Sunshine Coast.
Sunshine. Sunshine. Sunshine.